Wait.
And you're listening to Morning Report. Foreign policy is looming large on the political landscape. The government kicking off what it's calling a Pacific reset. The Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern beginning her first trip to the region as Prime Minister. Winston Peters travelling also. And before he left, he was critical of New Zealand's relationship with China in some aspects, including how the previous government was perhaps too fast to sign on to the One Belt, One Road initiative that China has been pushing. Well, let's talk now to the new leader of the National Party, Simon Bridges. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
Mr. Peters, in your assessment, taking a new tone with China, what is your reaction to what he's been saying?
I think to date you'd say there's been, at least in their public comments, a lack of emphasis on Asia by both the Prime Minister and the Foreign Minister. I think if that were to continue, that is an issue because it's the most dynamic, exciting part of the world that we're tied to. I think what he said yesterday, if he can, and if I put it this way, be taken seriously and it's seen as a forward sort of looking position by the government, is different. It's a fundamentally more negative and sceptical tone in relation to China. I mean, if you think about the last couple of decades actually under Labour and then National, it's been an approach of first to say yes to WTO accession, a first free trade agreement with the developing country, signing into the Asia Investment Infrastructure Bank. All of these things, he seems to be casting doubt on that.
Well, he opposed the China Free Trade Agreement, didn't he?
Correct.
And he asked a lot of questions about the Asian Infrastructure Bank.
Correct.
So where does that leave us with the Foreign Minister and China, do you think?
Well, I suppose the issue is this simply his discussion as a party leader and so on, or is this a wider government position? I would be concerned if it was, because fundamentally you've got a country that's one of the biggest in the world, second biggest economy, trade gone from 8-9 billion to 26 billion, tripled over the last few years. Now that's not what it's all about. I'm certainly not saying that you don't raise human rights issues, you don't raise rule of law issues, you do that. But I suppose it's the starting point from which you come from. And as I say, it seems, if he's to be taken on the face of what he's saying, that he's emphasising a shift there. I would disagree with that. I think that what we should be doing is engaging positively and raising the issues in a constructive manner.
Okay, but many people and many of his voters, especially who voted for New Zealand First, do believe that China's having too much influence on the New Zealand economy, and they're a bit worried about that.
And I would disagree with that. I mean, if you take the Belt and Road example, that was signed by me actually for this reason. It opens up opportunities, not so much in New Zealand, but internationally, whether you're a Becker's Consulting or all these sort of things. I mean, Winston would make the case that, if you look at construction, so on, they're taking over. Simply not correct. Factually, I can tell you as Transport Minister, when you go through those big contracts, where a Chinese company can make the best case in terms of the contracting and procurement, good for them, but actually that hasn't often been the case.
Okay, what about China and the Pacific? Because this brings together these two foreign policy strands that we're looking at the moment. They're off to the Pacific, and there seemed to be at least a subtext of saying China's influence in the Pacific is a little large, and perhaps they're trying to buy influence in that region. That's been a concern you'll hear expressed for many years now. Is it one that you share?
Look, it's like all these things. Yes, you can have legitimate concerns. Yes, you should be raising with China issues about rule of law and so on, and how they play foreign affairs. I would disagree, though, with the position that the new government has taken, that somehow there's a fundamental reset here. Look, there just isn't. We did aid. We increased it hugely in our time. It was a strategic change by Murray McCully. So I think this is fundamentally more of the same.
Okay, let's end in a final segment with trade, because there's a bit to talk about there. How worried are you about these tariffs that Donald Trump is talking about? 25% on steel, big tariff, 10% on aluminium, I think. How worried are you about a trade war and implications for New Zealand of that?
If it happens, it's a concern. I mean, I think that the first question is if. Let's hope that it doesn't. I think there's still a chance that it doesn't turn into something full-blown, because actually the officials and so on.
Should we be picking up the phone and dealing with Tim Grosser and others in the US to say, hey, look, we want an exemption from this if it goes ahead?
It's like the tone with China. It's constructive, but it's certainly clear. Protectionism doesn't work. New Zealand's experience is very clear.
Should we be demanding an exemption, though?
Well, we should be seeking one, yes, I agree with that. And we should be making our case for free trade very clear through all the fora we can, whether it's the WTO, whether it's others as well.
Should we take the US to the WTO or pursue that
Well, I think it'd be too early to say that or to sort of have a position on that. I don't think New Zealand getting into a trade war, if you want to put it that way, with America is going to be either here nor there. But I think what is true is while this isn't necessarily dire for the world economy, it would be dumb. And it would have an effect through Asia, through Australia, certainly in a much more significant way than New Zealand. But if it has an effect there, it would have an effect on us. So let's hope it doesn't happen. Let's hope that we can work constructively with other players to ensure that it doesn't. But if it does, look, it's something we should oppose.
Okay, TPP is being signed, I think, this week. Have you guys been invited, the National Party?
No, we haven't.
So they invited Jane Kelsey, but not the National
I think
Party.
that's right. I mean, firstly...
She offered, though, I saw her very generously offer via a press release that she'd give up your spot for... she'd give up her spot for you.
Well, that's very kind.
Are you going to take her up on that?
Well, I don't think we have been offered. I don't think Mr Parker wants to see us there. It's good it's happening.
But you'll still support it because they need your numbers in Parliament, don't they?
That's correct. I mean, look, the reality is this is very important for access into a number of markets, but certainly Japan being the big one. I think they should have invited Todd McClay, who's very influential in getting this back on track. But more than that, we are important in terms of making this happen. So us being there and understanding it would have been good. But look, we're not going to be childish, if you like, about this. It needs to happen.
The reshuffle, have you made decisions about that yet?
No, working through that. That's going to be a job for this week as I continue to talk with people. I'd like to be in a position to announce a reshuffle the week after this one.
And what about your own portfolios? Have you made a decision about what portfolio you will pursue?
Personally, I'm unlikely to take one. I've thought about that. Regional development is something that's important to me. I think important for New Zealand. But I think as leader of the opposition, of course, you have the ability to dip in and out, so it's unlikely that I will.
All right. Thanks for your time this morning. Do appreciate it. That's Simon Bridges, who's, of course, the new leader of the National Party. It's 7:45.
Government spending on food hardship grants have reached record levels, jumping by $10 million last year. Ministry of Social Development figures show that close to 500,000 food grants were made in 2017, an increase of close to 100,000 on the year before.